I still remember the exact moment I realized my husband could speak. Not the tearful, miraculous moment you'd see in movies. No, it was raw, violent, and dripping with betrayal. We were at my company's annual gala, 500 people, crystal chandeliers, champagne towers. Julian was being honored. Again, the brave man who rebuilt his life without a voice. My chest swelled with pride as I watched Scarlett, his sign language interpreter, translate his acceptance speech. Her hands moved gracefully, and she smiled at him with this tenderness. I told myself I was being paranoid. She was our friend. She'd been there since the accident, since the day the doctors told us Julian would never speak again. I'd left my clutch at our table and headed back through the service corridor. You know, that dim hallway where staff rush between the kitchen and ballroom. That's when I heard the commotion. A drunk waiter had cornered someone. I was about to call security when I saw them, Julian and Scarlett. The waiter grabbed her wrist, slurring something about pretty interpreter. And then Julian moved. He didn't use signs. He didn't back away. He shoved that man so hard he hit the wall. And then I heard it. A voice. Deep, rough, perfectly clear. Touch her again, and I break your arm. My blood turned to ice. 5 years. 5 years of silence, of being his voice, of learning sign language until my fingers cramped. 5 years of therapy appointments, specialist consultations, experimental treatments, and here he was, speaking like he'd never stopped. Scarlett giggled, actually giggled, and pulled him into a kiss, not a peck, a deep, possessive kiss. God, your voice gets me so hot, she whispered against his mouth. Too bad that idiot Isabella will never hear it. Julian smirked, running his hand down her back. Silence is my retirement plan, baby. Why work when she pays for everything? I stood there in the shadows, my phone already recording. My hands weren't shaking. That's what surprised me most. I thought I'd fall apart, but instead, I felt this eerie calm wash over me. Clarity. The puzzle pieces were rearranging themselves in my mind. Every suspicious moment, every convenient miscommunication, every time Scarlett translated something that didn't match Julian's expressions. I walked back to the ballroom. The applause for Julian's inspirational speech was still echoing. I climbed the stage steps, took the microphone from the host, and smiled at the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, forgive the interruption, but my husband has a miracle to share with you all tonight. I turned to Julian, whose face had gone sheet white. Darling, why don't you tell them yourself? And what happened next would change everything. Let me take you back 5 years, to the night that supposedly changed everything. Julian and I had been married for 2 years when the accident happened. He was driving home from a business trip, or so he said. His car flipped on a wet road. When I got to the hospital, he had a few bruises, a minor concussion, nothing serious. The doctors ran every test imaginable. CT scans, MRIs, neurological exams. Everything came back normal. But when Julian opened his mouth to speak, nothing came out. Not a whisper. Not a sound. The diagnosis was psychosomatic aphonia, trauma-induced muteness. The doctors said the psychological shock of the crash had locked his vocal cords. They assured me it could be temporary, that with therapy and time, his voice might return. I believed them. God, I believed every word. I held his hand in that sterile hospital room and promised him we'd get through this together, that I'd be his voice for as long as he needed me to be. What I didn't know then, what I couldn't have known, was that Julian had already decided this was his golden ticket. Within weeks, he'd stopped looking for work. Before the accident, he'd been a sales manager, always complaining about his boss, about the long hours, about how underappreciated he was. But after, suddenly he couldn't work. How could he, without a voice? He'd sit on our couch, gaming for hours, while I worked double shifts to cover our bills, his medical expenses, his therapy sessions. And I did it without complaining because I thought I was helping my husband heal. That's when Scarlett entered our lives. She came highly recommended, a speech therapist and sign language interpreter who specialized in trauma cases. She was warm, bubbly, always ready with a comforting word for me when I felt overwhelmed. "You're doing amazing, Isabella," she'd say, squeezing my shoulder. "Julian's so lucky to have you." She'd spend hours with him, teaching him ASL, supposedly working on vocal exercises to retrain his voice. She became part of our daily routine, part of our family. I never questioned why she smiled at him a little too long, why her hand lingered on his arm during sessions, why she started showing up on weekends, even when we hadn't scheduled an appointment. She was our friend. She was helping us. And Julian needed her, or so I thought, because she was the only one who truly understood his signs, the only one he seemed comfortable with. Whenever I tried to interpret for him, he'd get frustrated, shaking his head, reaching for Scarlett to correct me. Looking back now, I can see how perfectly they'd choreographed it all. Every gesture, every miscommunication, every moment that made me feel inadequate. They were building a cage around me, and I was helping them forge the bars. But I had no idea just how deep their betrayal really went. The daily humiliations started small. So small I didn't even recognize them as abuse at first. Julian's mother would come over every Sunday for dinner, and every single time, she'd find something to criticize. "Isabella, this roast is dry. Don't you know how to cook a proper meal? Why is the house so messy? My poor Julian deserves better. You're working too much. A wife should be home taking care of her husband." She'd say these things right in front of him, her voice dripping with disdain. And Julian, he'd just sit there looking down at his plate with this sad, helpless expression. Scarlett would watch his hands and translate. "He says, 'Please, Mom, don't fight. He just wants peace.'" But here's the thing. I'd been learning sign language for months by then, and Julian's hands weren't saying anything close to that. His signs were lazy, vague, barely even proper ASL. Yet Scarlett always had a perfect translation ready. Always something that made me look like the bad guy, or put me in a position where I had to prove myself. One time, his mother said I was letting myself go, because I'd gained 10 pounds from stress eating. Julian made a dismissive wave with his hand. "That's it, just a wave." And Scarlett translated, "He says you're beautiful no matter what, but maybe a gym membership would help you feel better about yourself." The suggestion came with a smile, a helpful, friendly smile, and I actually thanked her for being so thoughtful. God, I was so blind. The financial manipulation was even worse. We'd be sitting at dinner, and Julian would make some elaborate hand gestures. Scarlett would lean in, nodding seriously, then turn to me. "He's been researching a new experimental treatment in Germany. It's expensive, but it could restore his voice. He feels terrible asking, but he wants to know if we can afford $15,000 for the consultation." What was I supposed to say? No. Let me watch my husband suffer when there might be hope. I'd drain my savings, take out loans, anything to help him. Except there was never any treatment. The money would disappear into medical expenses that never quite added up. Trips to specialists who were fully booked when I tried to join the appointments. Prescriptions for medications I never saw him take. I'd ask Scarlett to clarify, and she'd give me this pitying look. "Isabella, honey, you have to trust the process." Julian's frustrated too, but these things take time. I remember one particular night that should have been my wake-up call. We were watching TV, and a commercial came on for a new luxury car. Julian's eyes lit up. He started signing rapidly, and Scarlett translated. He says the SUV he had before the accident made him feel safe. With a vehicle like that, he thinks he'd have the confidence to try driving again. It could be a huge step in his recovery. 2 weeks later, there was a $60,000 Range Rover in our driveway. Julian drove it to his therapy sessions. With Scarlett, while I took the bus to work, every decision I made, every dollar I spent, every moment of my life was being controlled by translations I never questioned. Julian would say things through Scarlett that isolated me from my friends. He feels anxious when you're gone too long. Maybe skip girls' night this week? Or guilt me into working harder. He feels like a burden. He wishes he could contribute financially. It really weighs on him. I was being played like a puppet, and the strings were invisible. Julian would sit there with his sad eyes and helpless gestures, and Scarlett would spin his silence into whatever narrative served them best. She wasn't just his interpreter. She was his scriptwriter, and I was their audience, applauding every performance. The worst part? I actually felt sorry for him. I'd lie awake at night, watching him sleep, thinking about how hard this must be for him, how trapped he must feel in his own silence, how lucky we were to have Scarlett to bridge the gap between us. I had no idea I was the one who was trapped. Let me take you back to that hallway, to the moment everything crystallized into perfect, horrifying clarity. I was standing maybe 15 feet away, hidden behind a service cart stacked with dirty dishes. The drunk waiter had stumbled off, muttering apologies, leaving Julian and Scarlett alone in that dimly lit corridor. I should have walked away, should have announced myself. But something kept me frozen there, my phone still recording, my heart hammering so hard I was sure they'd hear it. Scarlett pressed herself against Julian, running her fingers through his hair. "That was so hot," she purred. "It's my big, strong man defending me." Julian laughed. Actually laughed. This low, rumbling sound I hadn't heard in 5 years, and pulled her closer. "Can't have anyone messing with my investment, can I?" She slapped his chest playfully. "Investment. Is that all I am to you?" He kissed her neck. "You're my partner in crime, baby. My retirement plan. Your way out of actually working for a living." She giggled. "God, I love how shameless you are." My stomach turned. But I kept recording. Every word, every disgusting second. Julian glanced toward the ballroom, checking if anyone was watching, then leaned in close to Scarlett's ear. But the hallway had that weird acoustic thing, where sound bounces off the walls just right, and I heard every single word. "So listen, I've been thinking, we should push for the Switzerland thing. Tell Isabella there's this revolutionary clinic in Zurich that specializes in psychosomatic disorders. We can say it costs $80,000, maybe $100,000 for the full treatment program." Scarlett's eyes widened. $100,000? Will she actually pay that? Julian smirked. "She's paid everything else, hasn't she? The woman's desperate to fix me. It's almost sad." He traced his finger along Scarlett's jawline. "We'll book first-class tickets, stay at that 5-star hotel you showed me, hit the slopes. Isabella thinks I'm getting cutting-edge treatment. We're living it up in the Alps. Everyone wins." "Except Isabella," Scarlett said. But she was smiling. Not a trace of guilt. Just pure, gleeful satisfaction. "Isabella gets to feel like the devoted wife," Julian countered. "She loves playing the martyr. Have you seen how her friends look at her? Oh, Isabella, you're so strong. Oh, Isabella, you're such a saint. She eats that shit up. We're doing her a favor, really. Giving her purpose." They both laughed. Actually laughed. The sound echoed in that corridor, bouncing off the walls, each echo driving the knife deeper into my chest. I wanted to scream. I wanted to burst out from behind that cart and claw their eyes out. But I didn't, because something else was happening inside me. The grief, the shock, the betrayal, it was all crystallizing into something cold and sharp. Focus. Pure, calculated focus. 5 years. 5 years of my life. 5 years of my money, my energy, my love, poured into a man who was playing me like a fool. 5 years of therapy sessions, doctor visits, learning an entire language with my hands. 5 years of defending him to my family, to my friends who whispered that something didn't add up. 5 years of shouldering all the responsibility, all the bills, all the emotional weight while he sat on our couch playing video games and planning ski trips with his mistress. The nausea was there, sure. The heartbreak was crushing. But underneath it all was something sharper, clearer, a kind of rage that doesn't burn hot. It freezes everything around it. I watched them for another minute. Watched Scarlett adjust Julian's tie, preparing him to go back out and accept more praise, more sympathy, more admiration for his courage. Watched him practice his sad, voiceless expression in the reflection of a chrome service door. Watched them kiss one more time before Scarlett whispered, "Showtime, baby. Let's go make you look brave." That's when I stepped out of the shadows. Not to confront them, not yet. I walked past them like I'd just come from the bathroom, like I hadn't seen or heard a thing. Scarlett jumped a little, pulling away from Julian. "Oh, Isabella, we were just— Julian needed some air. The crowd was—" I smiled at her, a real smile. "No worries, I'm just grabbing my clutch. You two head back. They're about to serve dessert." Julian's eyes searched my face, looking for any sign that I knew. I kept my expression soft, concerned, loving. The same face I'd worn for 5 years. The face of the devoted wife who believed every lie. But inside, I was already planning. Because if they wanted a performance, I was about to give them the show of their lives. The walk back to that ballroom felt like miles. Every step was deliberate, calculated. My mind was racing through scenarios, possibilities, consequences. I could confront them privately. I could call a lawyer. I could pack his bags and change the locks. But none of those options felt right. None of them matched the scale of what they'd done to me. They'd humiliated me for 5 years. They'd made a fool of me in front of everyone I knew. My family, my friends, my colleagues. Everyone thought I was the devoted wife, the patient caregiver, the woman who stood by her disabled husband. And all along, I was the punchline to their private joke. No. If they wanted to perform, we'd perform, but this time I'd be directing the show. I reached our table just as the MC was wrapping up the evening's program. Before we close, I want to thank everyone for supporting our charitable foundation. I wasn't listening. I was watching Julian and Scarlett re-enter the ballroom, her hand briefly touching his lower back, just for a second, barely noticeable unless you knew what to look for. They sat down at our table, and Julian gave me this apologetic look, signing something I'd learned meant sorry, needed air. Scarlett translated immediately. He says the crowd was overwhelming. He's sorry for stepping out. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. But he's so grateful you organized this tribute to him. It means the world. I squeezed back. Of course, anything for my husband. The MC was closing out. That's all for tonight, folks. Drive safely. And that's when I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. Heads turned. I walked toward the stage, my heels clicking against the marble floor, each step echoing through the now quiet ballroom. The MC looked confused as I climbed the steps. "Mrs. Morrison, is everything—" I took the microphone from his hand, gently, politely. "I'm so sorry to interrupt. Everyone. I know you're all ready to head home. But something extraordinary has happened tonight, and I couldn't let you leave without sharing it." My voice was steady, warm, excited even. You see, for 5 years, my husband Julian has been unable to speak. We've tried everything: therapy, treatments, specialists from around the world. And tonight, I paused, letting the anticipation build. Tonight, a miracle occurred. The crowd murmured. Confused glances, intrigued whispers. At our table, I could see Julian's face had gone white. Actually white, like all the blood had drained straight to his feet. Scarlett was gripping his arm, her knuckles pale. She was saying something to him, probably urging him to play along, to figure out what I was doing. Julian experienced a moment of extreme stress in the hallway, I continued, my smile never wavering. And in that moment, defending someone he cares about, his voice returned. I looked directly at him. 500 pairs of eyes followed my gaze. Darling, why don't you come up here and share this miracle with everyone? Tell them what happened, in your own words. Julian didn't move. He couldn't. He was trapped in his chair, frozen by the weight of 500 stares. Scarlett was signing something frantically at him, probably trying to create an escape route. But there was nowhere to go, no way out. Come on, honey, I said, my voice echoing through the sound system. Don't be shy. They're all so happy for you. We've all been praying for this moment. The crowd started clapping, encouraging him. Come on, Julian, someone shouted. Let's hear it. The applause grew louder, more insistent. Julian stood up slowly, mechanically, like a man walking toward his own execution. Scarlett tried to follow him, but I held up my hand. Just Julian, please. This is his moment. He climbed the stage steps. Each one seemed to take an eternity. When he reached me, I could see sweat beading on his forehead. His jaw was clenched. His eyes were screaming at me. Anger, fear, desperation all mixed together. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Playing the part. Still playing the goddamn part. It's okay, I said softly, just for him to hear. I know talking in front of crowds is scary. Here, let me help you. I pulled out my phone, connected it to the sound system via Bluetooth. Thank God for modern technology. Since you seem to have lost your voice again from nerves, why don't we let everyone hear the recording from earlier? When your voice came back so... naturally? Julian's eyes went wide. He reached for the phone, but I stepped back. Hit play. The audio crackled through the speakers. Crystal clear, undeniable. Touch her again and I break your arm. Then Scarlett's voice. God, your voice gets me so hot. Too bad that idiot Isabella will never hear it. And finally, Julian's response. Silence is my retirement plan, baby. Why work when she pays for everything? The ballroom went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. 500 people, frozen in collective shock. Then the whispers started. A ripple of disbelief spreading through the crowd like wildfire. Did he just... Oh my God! Is that real? He's been faking. Julian stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. His face had gone from white to red. Then someone in the back shouted, Say something, Julian, defend yourself. And that's when he cracked. The pressure, the humiliation, the sheer panic of being caught. It all broke through his carefully maintained facade. This is fake, he shouted, his voice booming through the microphone I was still holding near him. It's AI! It's edited! She's trying to frame me! The crowd gasped. Actually gasped, because there it was. His voice. Perfect, strong, undeniable. 5 years of silence shattered in one desperate, stupid outburst. AI, I said calmly, tilting my head. Darling, AI is good, but it's not that good. Besides, I pulled up the video on my phone and showed it to the crowd on the projection screen behind us. There they were, Julian and Scarlett, kissing, laughing, planning, all of it. Time-stamped with tonight's date. Location tagged to this very building. Julian stumbled backward. His mouth worked, trying to form words, explanations, anything. But what could he say? The evidence was literally projected 10 feet high behind him. Scarlett had stood up from her seat, trying to leave, but several people blocked her path. My colleague, Marcus, crossed his arms. I think you'd better stay, Ms. Chen. We all want to hear how this happened. I handed the microphone back to the MC, who took it with trembling hands. Thank you all for coming tonight, I said, my voice steady as stone. The foundation will be in touch about next year's gala. For now, I think my husband and his interpreter have some explaining to do to everyone. I walked off that stage with my head high, grabbed my clutch, and headed for the exit. Behind me, chaos erupted. Voices shouting questions, accusations flying, Julian calling my name, actually calling it, his voice hoarse and desperate. Isabella? Isabella? Wait, let me explain. But I didn't turn around, didn't even slow down, because I was done being the audience to their show. And what I had planned next would make tonight look like a warm-up act. The next morning, my phone had 47 missed calls, texts flooded in by the hundreds, my social media was exploding, but I ignored all of it. I sat in my kitchen, drinking coffee, scrolling through the news articles that were already popping up. The local man's miraculous voice recovery raises questions. Disability fraud suspected after gala confrontation. Sign language interpreter under investigation. It was everywhere. Someone had filmed my little stage moment and posted it online. By sunrise, it had 500,000 views. By noon, it was trending. Julian's face was plastered across every local news outlet, and the court of public opinion had already delivered its verdict. Guilty. That's when his mother showed up at my door. I'd been expecting her, Dorothy Morrison, the woman who'd spent 5 years telling me I wasn't good enough for her precious son. She didn't knock. She pounded. Isabella, open this door right now. I took my time, finished my coffee, checked my lipstick in the hallway mirror. Then I opened the door. Dorothy pushed past me without invitation, her designer handbag swinging. How dare you humiliate my son like that? In front of everyone. Do you have any idea what you've done to his reputation? To our family's name? Her face was flushed, her voice shrill. Behind her, I could see a news van parked across the street. Perfect. Your son, I said calmly, closing the door, humiliated himself. I just provided the audio. That audio was taken out of context. Julian told me everything. He was defending that poor girl from a drunk man. And yes, his voice came back from the adrenaline. It's a medical miracle. She was actually trying to sell this. The delusion was almost impressive. The doctors said trauma could lock his voice, so trauma could unlock it. This is a blessing from God. I laughed, actually laughed right in her face. A blessing from God? Dorothy, your son has been faking this for 5 years. He's been sleeping with his interpreter, stealing my money, and living like a king while I worked myself to exhaustion. And you want to call that a miracle? She straightened her spine, lifting her chin. I've already contacted our attorney. We're going to release a statement to the press explaining that this was a momentary recovery triggered by extreme stress. Julian's been traumatized all over again by your cruelty. In fact, we're considering suing you for emotional distress and defamation. Wow, the audacity, the sheer, breathtaking audacity. You do that, I said, pulling out my phone. But before you go, you should know I've been reviewing our financial records. Every penny I spent on Julian's treatment over the last 5 years. Every specialist visit, every therapy session, every experimental treatment. I've got receipts, and I've got a very good lawyer who's already drafting paperwork. I showed her my screen, emails from my attorney, already CC'd to the state insurance fraud division. Did you know that faking a disability to collect insurance benefits is a felony? That falsifying medical records is fraud? That Scarlett's been billing my insurance $5,000 a month for essential medical translation services? Dorothy's face flickered, just for a second. Fear cutting through the righteous indignation. So here's what's going to happen, I continued, my voice ice cold. Julian is going to admit that his voice returned. He can spin it however he wants. Adrenaline, miracle, whatever helps him sleep at night. But he's going to admit it. Because if he doesn't, I'm going to make sure every insurance company, every disability services agency, and every fraud investigator in the state gets a copy of that recording. along with financial records showing exactly how much money has disappeared into medical expenses that never happened. I stepped closer to her, and she actually backed up. Dorothy Morrison, the woman who'd terrorized me for 5 years, was backing away from me. Your son made me feel small, weak, stupid. He made me question my own worth every single day. But you know what? I'm not the idiot here. I'm the woman who paid for everything, which means I have all the receipts, all the proof, all the power. Dorothy's mouth opened and closed. For once in her life, she had nothing to say. Now get out of my house, I said quietly, and tell Julian that if he wants to talk, he can speak to my lawyer. Oh, wait. I guess he can actually do that now, can he? Since his voice magically works again. She left without another word, practically running to her Mercedes. Through the window, I watched her sit in the driver's seat for a full 5 minutes, phone pressed to her ear, probably calling Julian, probably calling their lawyer, probably trying to figure out how to spin this disaster into something salvageable. But it was too late for spin. The internet had already decided. Fake disability was trending. People were sharing stories of real disability fraud, real people who abused the system. Julian's face was becoming the poster child for everything wrong with insurance scams. Strangers were tracking down his social media, finding photos of him at bars, at parties, looking perfectly healthy and happy while I worked doubles to pay for his recovery. By evening, Julian himself showed up. I watched him through the Ring camera, pacing on my porch, running his hands through his hair, clearly rehearsing what to say. When he finally rang the bell, I let it ring 3 times before answering through the speaker. What do you want, Julian? His face appeared in the camera. He looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes, wrinkled clothes, defeat written across every feature. Isabella, please, can we talk? Face to face? I know I fucked up, but what? I cut him off. But you didn't mean to get caught. But it was just a joke that went on for 5 years. But you actually love me, and Scarlett meant nothing. It wasn't... He stopped, swallowed hard. When he spoke again, his voice cracked. It started as... I don't know what it started as. After the accident, the doctor said maybe my voice wouldn't come back, and I leaned into it. It was easier than going back to that soul-crushing job. Easier than fighting with my boss every day. And you were so supportive, so loving. You thought you'd take advantage of it, I finished. You thought you'd found the perfect scam, and then Scarlett came along, and you thought you'd found the perfect partner. He looked down, ashamed. Or just ashamed he got caught. Hard to tell. I want to make this right. Tell me how to make this right. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. Julian, you can't make this right. You destroyed 5 years of my life. You stole my money, my trust, my dignity. You made me learn an entire language to communicate with you, and the whole time you were laughing at me behind my back. My voice was steady, calm, which somehow made it worse. The only thing you can do now is sign the divorce papers when they arrive, and pray that the insurance fraud charges don't land you in prison. Insurance fraud? His face went pale. Isabella, come on, don't do this. I'll pay you back every penny, I swear. I'll get a job, You should have thought about that before you called me an idiot on camera, I said, and ended the call. Through the window, I watched him stand there for another 10 minutes, staring at my front door like he could will it to open, like he could will me to forgive him. But some betrayals are too big for forgiveness. Some lies cut too deep for healing. And I wasn't done cutting yet. Scarlett was easier to break than I expected. I had my lawyer send her a formal letter on official letterhead, the kind with embossed logos and legal jargon that makes your stomach drop when you open the envelope. The message was simple, direct, and absolutely terrifying. You billed $5,000 per month for medical interpretation services for a patient who was never actually disabled. That's $300,000 in fraudulent billing over 5 years. You have 48 hours to return the full amount, or we file criminal charges for insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and theft by deception. My lawyer had attached copies of every single invoice Scarlett had submitted, every bank transfer, every receipt, all highlighted in yellow, like evidence in a crime drama, because that's exactly what it was. She showed up at my office the next day. No appointment, no warning. Just barged past my assistant, who tried to stop her but couldn't. Scarlett was a mess. Mascara streaked down her cheeks, hair falling out of what used to be a neat bun, designer purse clutched to her chest like it could somehow protect her from what was coming. "Isabella, please, we need to talk." Her voice was shaking. Not the confident, smooth voice she used when translating Julian's fake signs. This was raw panic. I looked up from my computer slowly, made her stand there in front of my desk like a student called to the principal's office. I took my time closing my laptop, setting down my pen, folding my hands, let the silence stretch until I could practically hear her heart hammering. "Make it quick," I finally said. "I have a meeting in 10 minutes. "That letter, it's not fair. I didn't know." She stopped herself, realizing how idiotic that defense sounded when we both knew the truth. She took a shaky breath and tried again. "Okay, yes, I knew Julian could speak, but he told me he had trauma. Real trauma. He said the silence helped him cope with anxiety, that you knew about it and were playing along. He said you were all in on it together for the insurance money." Her words were tumbling out faster now, desperate and sloppy. "He made it sound like you were the mastermind and I was just helping facilitate your plan." I actually laughed. Cold and sharp. "So you're telling me I committed fraud against myself? That I worked 60-hour weeks, drained my savings, took out loans, all to pay for fake treatments that I supposedly knew were fake? Do you hear how stupid that sounds, Scarlett?" I stood up, walked around my desk, and got close enough to see the tiny blood vessels that had burst in her eyes from crying. "Try again. And this time, don't insult my intelligence." Her face crumbled completely. The facade shattered. "He manipulated me too," she sobbed. Actually sobbed, her shoulders shaking. "He told me once he got enough money saved up, we'd run away together, start a new life somewhere warm. He promised me we'd get married, have kids, build something real. He said you were cold, that you didn't love him anymore, that the marriage was already over and I was saving him from a life of misery." She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. "I thought I was helping him escape. I thought he loved me." "No, Scarlett." I leaned against my desk, arms crossed, looking down at her like the pathetic creature she was. "He used me to pay the bills. He used you to steal them. There's a difference. A big one. I was a wife. You were an accomplice. And now you're going to pay me back every single cent, or you're going to prison. Your choice." "I don't have $300,000. Her voice pitched up into a wail. "That money's gone. We spent it on trips to Cabo, on clothes, on rent for the apartment we kept across town, on—" She stopped dead. Her hand flew to her mouth. She'd just confessed to even more fraud. An entire secret apartment, more expenses, more lies. The hole she was digging just got deeper. I smiled, sweet as arsenic. "Then I guess you'd better figure it out. Sell your car, sell your jewelry, take out a loan, max out your credit cards. I don't care how you do it, but you're going to pay me back." I picked up my phone, showed her the screen where my lawyer's email was already queued up, ready to send to the State Fraud Division. "Because if you can't come up with that money, I'm not just taking everything you have, I'm making sure you spend the next 5 to 10 years in prison. And good luck finding work as a medical interpreter with a fraud conviction on your record. Good luck finding any work at all." She grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in hard enough to leave marks. Pure desperation. Please, I'll do anything. I'll testify against Julian. I'll tell the police it was all his idea, that he coerced me, that he threatened me if I didn't go along with it. I'll say whatever you want me to say. Her eyes were wild now, searching my face for any hint of mercy. I pulled my arm free, disgusted. "Oh, you'll testify anyway," I said flatly. "That's not negotiable. That's happening whether you like it or not. The question is whether you do it as a witness trying to mitigate your own sentence or as a co-defendant going down with the ship." I walked back to my desk, sat down, and opened my laptop like she wasn't even there anymore. "You have 30 days to get me that money. And Scarlett? Don't even think about running. I've already had my attorney flag your passport. You try to leave the country. You become a fugitive. And trust me, extradition is a real bitch." She left my office completely destroyed, shoulders hunched, face blotchy. The confident, beautiful interpreter who used to waltz into my home with her perfect smile and her perfect lies was gone. In her place was just a scared woman who'd finally realized that actions have consequences. And honestly, I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt, no anger, just cold, mechanical efficiency. Like I was crossing items off a to-do list. Destroy Scarlett's life. Check. Move on to the next task. Because Julian had taught me something incredibly valuable over those 5 years of lies. How to separate emotion from action. How to smile while planning someone's downfall. How to play the long game with patience and precision. And his game. His game was about to get so much worse. The real nuclear option came 3 days later. I'd been saving it. Savoring it, really. Julian had been collecting disability insurance payments for 5 years. Not from me, from the state, $2,800 a month, tax-free, deposited directly into his account. Money meant for people who actually couldn't work. People who genuinely needed help. He'd been cashing those checks while planning ski trips and buying designer watches. While I worked myself into exhaustion, he was committing felony fraud against the government. I called my lawyer. I filed the report with the State Insurance Fraud Division. Include everything, the video, the audio, the financial records, all of it. She hesitated. "Isabella, you know this means criminal charges, right? Not just civil court. We're talking prison time." I didn't hesitate. "Good, file it." Within 48 hours, 2 investigators showed up at what used to be our house. Julian answered the door in sweatpants and a gaming headset, probably in the middle of a Call of Duty match. They served him with papers right there on the doorstep. "Mr. Morrison, you're being investigated for disability fraud, insurance fraud, and theft of government benefits. We're going to need you to come downtown for questioning." I watched it all happen from my car parked across the street. Watched his face go white. Watched him stammer and gesture wildly, probably trying to explain, to lie his way out of it like he'd lied his way into it. But there's no talking your way out of federal investigators. They don't care about your sob story. They care about numbers. And the numbers said Julian owed the state $168,000 in fraudulent disability payments, plus penalties, plus interest. We were looking at close to $300,000 in restitution. He didn't have it. Of course he didn't have it. He'd spent it all. The next day, I had the locks changed. All of them. Front door, back door, garage, even the gate code. I hired a company to box up his stuff, his clothes, his gaming console, his collection of expensive watches he'd bought with stolen money, and I had it all delivered to his mother's house. Then I sent him a text. Just one line. "The house is in my name. You're not welcome here anymore." He showed up anyway. Pounded on the door for 20 minutes, shouting loud enough that the neighbors came out to watch. "Isabella, open this fucking door. You can't just kick me out. I live here." His voice, that voice he'd hidden for 5 years, was raw with rage and desperation. "We need to talk. I have rights. This is my house too." I opened the door. Just a crack. Just enough for him to see my face. Actually, Julian, It's not. I bought this house 3 years ago with my inheritance. Your name isn't on the deed. Check the property records if you don't believe me." His mouth fell open. He'd never bothered to check, never bothered to ask. He'd just assumed that everything I had was his. "And as for your rights, you lost those when you committed fraud. Now get off my property before I call the police." "You bitch," he hissed. And for a second, I thought he might actually try to force his way in. "You cold, vindictive bitch. I gave you 5 years of my life." I smiled. Actually smiled. "No, Julian, you stole 5 years of mine. But here's the beautiful thing. I'm getting them back. I'm 34 years old. I have my career, my house, my freedom. You're 36, unemployed, facing criminal charges, and about to owe the government more money than you'll ever make." I leaned in closer, my voice dropping to barely a whisper. "And you want to know the real kicker? I actually liked you better when you didn't talk. At least then, you were quiet." I closed the door, locked it, triple locked it, and walked away while he screamed obscenities from the porch. Because some people don't deserve a voice. And Julian was finally about to learn that the hard way. 6 months later, I sat in a courtroom and watched Julian's entire world collapse. The charges were brutal: disability fraud, insurance fraud, theft of government benefits, conspiracy. His lawyer, a public defender because he couldn't afford anyone better, tried to argue that Julian had genuinely believed he was disabled, that the psychosomatic diagnosis was real. But then the prosecution played the audio. That damning, crystal-clear audio of Julian laughing about his retirement plan. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. The judge wasn't sympathetic. "Mr. Morrison, you stole from taxpayers. You stole from people with real disabilities who need these resources. You made a mockery of the system designed to help the vulnerable." She sentenced him to 2 years in prison, reduced because he was a first-time offender, plus 5 years probation and full restitution. $168,000 to the state. $150,000 to me for the fraudulent medical expenses. $50,000 in penalties and fees. He'd be paying it off for the rest of his life. Scarlett had cut a deal. She testified against him, returned $200,000 she'd liquidated from selling everything she owned, and got probation plus community service. I actually saw her at a soup kitchen once, serving meals in a bright orange vest that said, "Court-ordered service," on the back. She looked up, saw me walking past, and quickly looked away. Good. I hope she thinks about me every single day. Julian got out after 18 months on good behavior. I heard through the grapevine that he was working at a call center. The irony was almost poetic. After spending 5 years pretending he couldn't speak, he now spent 8 hours a day on the phone, reading scripts, dealing with angry customers screaming at him about their cable bills. Minimum wage. No benefits. His voice, the thing he'd hidden and weaponized, was now his prison. His mother stopped calling me after the trial. No more Sunday dinners, no more criticism. I ran into her once at a charity event, and she actually turned and walked the other way. The whole Morrison family had been socially obliterated. Their friends knew. Their church knew. Everyone knew that Julian had faked a disability and stolen from his wife. The shame was a scarlet letter they'd wear forever. As for me, I took that trip to Switzerland, not for a fake medical treatment, for me. I stayed in a 5-star hotel in Zurich, the one Julian and Scarlett had planned to use with my money. I went skiing in the Alps, drank hot chocolate in a cabin with a view of the mountains, sat in the silence, real silence, the kind that's peaceful instead of poisonous, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. I didn't think about Julian. Didn't wonder if he was okay or if prison had changed him. I didn't think about Scarlett or Dorothy or any of them. They were footnotes now, characters in a story that was finally over. I was writing new chapters, and they weren't invited to be part of them. One evening, I stood on my hotel balcony watching the sunset paint the snow-covered peaks pink and gold. My phone buzzed, a message from my lawyer. Morrison's parole hearing next month. He's requesting early release. Need your victim impact statement. I typed back, tell them I have nothing to say. He's already taken enough of my time. And I meant it. Because the best revenge wasn't making Julian suffer. It was moving on so completely that he became irrelevant. He wanted my attention, my anger, my energy. And I was giving him nothing. Just empty space where he used to be. I raised my glass of wine to the mountains, to the silence, to the life I'd built back from the ashes of his betrayal. And somewhere, in a cramped call center cubicle, Julian was probably taking another call, his voice hoarse from overuse, learning what it really meant to work for a living. I'm back home now. Different home. I sold the old house. Too many ghosts. This one's smaller, cozier, and completely mine. No memories of Julian pacing the hallways. No echoes of Scarlett's fake translations. Just clean, quiet space filled with things I actually chose. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how I handled it. If exposing Julian so publicly was too harsh. If I should have given him a chance to explain, to apologize privately, to make amends. And honestly, I sleep better now than I have in 6 years. I don't wake up anxious. Don't second-guess every decision. Don't feel like I'm drowning under the weight of someone else's lies. Julian didn't just steal my money, he stole my peace. And I took it back the only way I could. Loudly, publicly, permanently. Last week, I got a letter from him, forwarded through my lawyer because he's not allowed to contact me directly. It was 3 pages long, full of apologies and justifications and promises that he's changed. That prison taught him accountability, that he wants to make things right. I read the first paragraph, then fed the whole thing through my shredder, because some apologies come too late, some betrayals cut too deep, and some people only say sorry because they finally faced consequences, not because they actually feel remorse. The truth is, silence can be a weapon. Julian proved that. He used it to manipulate, to control, to steal. But silence can also be a gift. And now I'm giving him the gift of my silence. No responses, no engagement, no energy. He's been erased from my life as completely as if he never existed. And that, I think, is the purest form of justice. So here's what I learned. The truth always finds a way to speak. Even when someone tries to bury it under 5 years of fake disability and manufactured sympathy. Even when they think they've gotten away with it. The truth is patient, and when it finally screams, everyone listens. But here's the thing about revenge. Sometimes the sweetest kind doesn't involve confrontation at all. Sometimes it's about pressing a button from miles away and watching everything burn. I exposed my husband's lies in front of 500 people. But what if you could expose your in-laws without even being in the same room? What if you had the power to turn their perfect party into absolute chaos with just a few taps on a screen? The next story is about a woman who paid $10 million for her mother-in-law's dream mansion, only to receive a text on inauguration night saying she wasn't classy enough to attend. She didn't argue, didn't cry. She just opened an app on her tablet and activated something called Protocol Intrusion. Red emergency lights, blaring sirens, sprinklers drowning 200 guests in their designer gowns. All while she sat in her office, sipping wine, watching the security cameras. Want to see how she turned a smart home into the ultimate revenge machine? Click now.